welcome to a bit of Power Platform Security 101. The spelling mistake on the picture isn't me, it's Dali. Dali cannot put in any real words without deciding to add extra characters. So you'll see in some of my pictures that have been created by ChatGPT, there's some weird spelling. So I thought I'm dyslexic, but that's not me. So we're going to go through some basic Power Platform. We're going to start with some simple stuff, then we're going to move on to some of the newer things. So ask questions as you go. We'll try and get to the end. Those of you who know me know I talk far too much, so we'll try and keep it moving. So I can persuade it's going to move. There we go. So if you don't know me already, I tend to be known as the Platform Guardian. Many moons ago, I was from SharePoint and Exchange. I now look after Power Platform as well. Recently changed jobs. I'm now the Microsoft DCX CTO for Capgemini, which means I get to play with all the tech again, which is fantastic. I've been a fast track recognized architect now for 4 years, or nearly 5 years. And you can find me on LinkedIn if you haven't already. Right, so what are we going to look at today? We're going to look at the basic stuff, which I think it always gets forgotten, just to make sure everybody who's on the call knows what we're looking at. Then we're going to have a little bit about Purview. There's some bits on my Azure Purview that may play up because I've just seen in me testing it, something will break, but we'll work with it. We're going to look a little bit about Fabric because that's an interesting point of the security conversation, and a lot of the new and upcoming features we'll look at as we go through, so you're not waiting till the end because we inevitably run out of time and Sarah has to shut me up. So let's look at setting up. One of the first things non-Power Platform people ask, particularly your security people, is who the hell does what and how do I stop them? So those of you who've been Dataverse a long time, there's nothing really new on this. But for those of you who haven't come from Dynamics Dataverse, there's a few things I want to call out, and I'll make sure Sarah's got this deck as well when we finish. The first people who have access to absolutely everything are your global admins in M365. People forget that we often get security questions when there's an audit going on. Who the hell are all these system admins in this environment? People, I don't know. So anybody who is a global admin will also show in any audit as being a sysadmin. Any Power Platform admin will show as being a system admin in an audit. So it's just so you're aware. If you've already got a good security structure in your business, you will know as an M365 team that you don't have hundreds of global admins. Ideally, you have 2 or 3. And that same rule should be applied to your Power Platform admins. If I go to a client and they've got 30, 40 Power Platform admins, I'm like, what are you doing? That you've got no control. So again, Power Platform admins, they can do everything that a sysadmin can, but we can also see and access a lot more. Something that for security people, which is starting to freak security teams out, is as a Power Platform admin, you are now also a Power BI Fabric admin, whether you want to be or not. Now, it doesn't go the other way, but you now have the ability to create workspaces, do anything the Power BI admins do, which can also become a security hole. So just as when we first started as Power Platform admins, we used to say the global admins can do it, but you should have a designated person. Don't let Power Platform admins get dragged into being Power BI admins unless they've been trained, because we can all press the buttons. We don't always know what they do. So sysadmins, there's a little jump in there before somebody goes, what happened to environment admins? So when we first make an environment up, you may see an account type called an environment admin. But if that environment is Dataverse, they're instantly turned into a sysadmin. You'll never be able to find them on a search as an environment admin anymore. They get turned into being a sysadmin, but the main sysadmin. So don't panic, they're not in here. If you've just got a non-Dataverse environment, they will appear as an environment admin. System customizer, for those of you non-dynamics, this often confuses people. So the biggest difference between a sysadmin and a sys customizer is, as a system admin of an environment, I can see all the data in Dataverse. As a system customizer, I can only see records related to me, whether I've made them or I'm allowed to read them normally. So they're the biggest difference. There are a few other queer little nuances, but from a security auditing point of view, if your business is checked and they want to know why you've got 1,600 sysadmins, you've got your own questions to answer. A system customizer can add people, do everything else in the management of that environment, but they can't see the data. So it's a slight step down. Now, good old environment makers, there are sit devs or our pro devs, they can see what they've been allowed to see in the way and tables and things that have been made. They're able to share what they've made. They're also allowed to create some security roles, which freaks security people out. If you have good practices, you may already set them up to ask for you to sysadmins to make the security roles for them. One of the security things that come up in an audit is you may be a maker in an environment, but you are also a user of something. Now, when we talk about this, when we do auditing, if you've done your ALM properly, you'll have a dev, a UAT, and a prod. But we all know there are bits of the business that do their entire world in one environment. And that's, while we shouldn't do it, they exist. The problem we have there on a security thing is that if you've been given access to table 1, 2, and 3 as a user, and then you're allowed to be a maker in that same environment, you can see those tables. Now, you can't necessarily see all the data, you'll only see what you're allowed to see. But when they do a review to say, well, how can you be a maker and you've got these extra tables? What are you doing? It's about understanding what those audits are going to show up. Now, when we come in and do auditing for clients, we have to do it purely security. There's no understanding that this is beautiful Dataverse and Power Platform. We follow the same way we would do it for SQL, Oracle, or anything else. So some of these oddities will show up. So where you've got teams that are building and living in the same environment, it's back to the data. Should you be having people building with certain data in the same environment as their buddies? And, you know, we always talk about the obvious about his sales and his HR data. Would we allow them to build in the same place? No. But when we take it down to team level, sometimes there's bits of data that they shouldn't see. So your best practice from a security perspective is to have an environment for different things. I found a client the other day that was still trying to build an environment strategy by country, not by department, not by pro dev citizen, it was by country. And you can imagine the total chaos that was going on in there. So this reason I show this is more that you think about it if you were audited. If somebody came through and looked at all your human settings today, how clean are you? The basic users, and this is the reason I add this one on the end, is the basic user role, which is non-editable now, only sees the out-of-the-box tables. If you've obviously made your own tables, you have to make a secondary security role there to allow them to get access. How many of you as admins know all the weird security roles that have been made up in these environments? Typically, as a Power Platform admin, I don't know, and I probably don't care unless I'm audited. So this is a bit of a question to you. Is your sysadmins should be responsible for monitoring and keeping a list of all the weird security roles that have been made. Now, in a dev environment, that could be hundreds of weird things they've tried. But when you go to production environments, you should have a catalog that tells you who does what, where, and when. There are some great little tools out there that can give you some of this information, but this is something the sysadmin should be responsible for. Why have you got 32 extra security roles? They all look like they're doing the same thing. And these are the things that will pull you up on an audit, because the audit will go to the Power Platform admin, not the developer. Does that make sense? So moving on, I'm going to quickly look at these, and then we're going to have a very quick look through the Power Platform Admin Center, because some of these are familiar, some of these may be new. This is thinking security rather than specific admin. Where do we care? Where do we need to work with our security teams? We're going to have a little look at the environments, and we're going to talk a little bit about managed versus standard. And I know a few of you on the call, you rant at me regularly about why does managed environments get everything? It's the same as any other software we get. Is you're paying for the extra pack. Those of you that only pay in the Power and from a M365 point of view, you're getting a lot for free. And whilst I don't necessarily agree with all the Microsoft costs, the managed environments are for premium users. So premium price, premium toys. I'm going to show you the privacy and security parts in case any of you haven't seen that. I'm going to show you a little bit about environment routing, because that's still in preview and some of you may not have seen it. I'll just refresh you on what's in the policies area. And we're going to look at tenant settings, because some of that's changed as well. And I'll quickly show you where these other things are. So if I can come out of this and find the admin center. Can you see my Power Platform screen? That's okay, perfect. So let's have a little look. Most of you, I expect, are familiar here, but if we go and pick, I'm going to go and pick on this one. There's some extra pieces that have appeared and changed in settings, which you may not have seen. So hiding under product, we've got privacy and security. And some of you will go, yeah, but auditing's down there. This has been hiding here for about 18 months. It has a variety of things in it. And I'm going to just walk you through some of what's here. Now, you're going to see some things on here are grayed out, like the IP firewall settings. It's only for managed environments. But these all appear for all environments. So what have we got now? Privacy statement. Legally, for a lot of countries, we need to show a privacy statement for most things we do. You can choose where that comes from, but if you add your business private security statement in here to say what you do and don't do with people's data, it can be added very easily from anywhere else. Blocking attachments. Now that's been there some time, and same with the MIME types. We've got session expiration. We can shut them down if they leave their sessions open too long. We can get really unpopular with that. And if I turn inactivity on and off, I can set how long inactivity can be turned on. Now, again, don't just take power into your own hands, admins. Go and talk to your users, because it could be they're a team with 3 different screens open. And if you tell them it's going to turn off after 30 seconds, they will hate you and stop using the system. But similarly, should it still be open after 30 minutes? Is that a security thing? What's the data? If this is finance or HR or something very sensitive, that may only be 2 or 3 minutes. They're allowed not to have any activity. Do we want our little friends to share? No. Well, maybe they can. And we've got the ability to do links and things within Teams. Now, I'll do another session another time, and those of you who are going to see me either Collab Summit or EPPC, I'm going to do a much more detailed session on these. The IP address settings in here, if this is a managed environment, it lets me decide whether I want cookie binding. So cookie binding lets me decide where you can have those cookies from. Are they you? Is it an attack? Cookie binding has been something that's happened a lot on attacks around. Now, Power Platform and Dataverse itself have now had 9 ransomware attacks globally. People don't hear about it so much. 3 of those were occurred by cookies. So it's being aware of what's there, which is why it exists. And again, I'll put some links in there if you have never played with cookies and understanding what cookie binding is. The IP firewall is quite important if your data is sensitive. What it does is stop anything reading from this environment that I don't want it to. We spend so much time protecting and creating security roles and being really tight on what we're trying to do in Dataverse. But you often forget anybody who can use the Dataverse API can just dive in and read you anyway. We're one small part in the farm of Microsoft. If somebody's using Azure Data Factory, they're using an API in something in ProDev, they're just happily taking your stuff out with the right permissions to get to you. But should they? We all know ProDevs cut corners just like the rest of us. So if you don't want any APIs reading your environments, you don't want other environments reading your environments. The IP firewalls are important. Now, they will stop certain things like the service bus connections. They will stop some of the integrations that maybe you've built with custom APIs. We have to get to the point where we have to whitelist certain things. And again, I'll do a blog. I'm just doing a blog on that at the moment. But if you have secure stuff that normally would not be allowed on Power Platform because they go, oh, it's too fluffy, it's not real, I can't secure it, it's something that we're helping clients do. And security teams understand it, because when we pen test it, it actually stops me. If I'm pen testing an environment that's not got an Enter ID security group and not got any protection whatsoever, I can get in within less than a minute. This IP firewall is very good, but you have to understand the entire solution first. Now, there's some other content security policies here. Now, some of this is going to change as more and more of Purview comes in. This lets you do reports on content security violations, but you need to know what your content security is first. If you turn that on, you will drown in messages, because 90% of everything out the box is considered a violation. Thanks, Microsoft. You can also then choose between model-driven and canvas, and you can also block violations. Now, be very careful with this one. If you block violations of content, so I can choose, content is often here about whether I want images, whether I'm going to allow ProDev code. Be careful where you turn it on, because if you've already got certain iframes and things in place, you may break something, because this is not clear what you're going to break. So do try it in your dev environments first. Any questions on some of the things in here? There's a lot to read up, and I'll make sure you've got the links to this so you can go away and explore. No. So I'm going to jump into environment groups. Now, environment grouping is only for managed environments. Everything at the moment is managed environments. Now, what's the purpose of it? If you've got hundreds, if not thousands of environments, it's really hard to manage. It's really hard to see what's happening. So one of the things we can do is we can put our environments into small groups. There are rules that come out of the box. I haven't added any new ones in here. So within these environments I've chosen to put in this group, you get the abilities to decide what sharing controls you're going to limit or not limit. I get the usage insights automatically, and you can set the maker welcome content. Now, one of the first places that these groups come in is maybe you need different languages, maybe you need different messages. So you can set the environment group up to get different messages. Do you want solution checker enforced or not? Because if you've got Dynamics that's been there some time, are all your solutions going to pass the solution checker? Maybe, maybe not. If you've got older solutions, they may not pass the solution checker. And if you enforce it, your solutions may stop next time you update something. Now, the backup retention preview, I'm just going to click on this one. This is something Microsoft have got hell for years. And why do I bring this into a security thing? When you are audited, maybe by a finance house or a business that is checking how you're looking after their data, Microsoft out of the box, it's 7 days if it's non-Dynamics. Now, we've often said you could go and ask them nicely up to 30 days. I can actually set a retention policy for backups up to 28 days. There is talk at the moment about this being updated to let this go up to as far as 60 days. But if you are struggling and one of your points of argument with your architects, with your security team, your business leaders is you've got to definitively have more than 7 days worth of backups, it's now possible to get to 28 days. Whilst it's still not brilliant compared to pretty much every other technology we have in the Microsoft stack, it's an improvement. And if they can bring this up to 60 days, it brings us more in line with some of the other cloud products. This one as well, this has literally just come out. These AI-enabled generated descriptions. Now, what this is going to do, if you turn it on, is it tries to create the description for the things that have been made. You can imagine the chaos that's happening already. Obviously, the search words and the terminology you use in your business is very different from another one. Who in their business has 100 acronyms that wouldn't make any sense to anyone else? Do we name our Power Apps sensibly? No. Do we name our screens and things in our Power Apps sensibly? Possibly, rarely. So you can imagine how difficult it is for AI to come up with these descriptions. It's quite fun to play with, but if you enable it for this environment, don't trust it. You've got to make sure that the makers go back and check it. Part of why I'm calling this out under security is we've seen some very strange and sometimes inappropriate descriptions appearing, and they'll look at you as the admin and go, why is it called that? But let me just jump out of those. So environment groups have got multiple purposes. One, we can add those rules. We can start to create our own rules, and Microsoft are just about to release several new rules into this. Let me just jump into a slightly different one. Yeah, we haven't, the new ability to add the new ones has just disappeared again. So Creating environments should be creating environments that are like each other. We've thought about this in the past in DLP, where we've looked for all the ones that were SharePoint and SQL, as well as Office 365. But this could be user groups. This could be the pro devs have got a group. It could be I'm putting all the citizen devs in another group. I'm going to put the contractors in a group. It's about how you want to manage it. And potentially in your businesses, you may need to delegate groups, because us poor old admins, we can't do it all the time. But there's another benefit to this. One of the things that's coming, and it's being in private preview at the moment, is adding DLP to a group. How many of you have got more DLPs than you can count, and you can never find what you're trying to do? So there is the ability to add a data loss prevention policy to a group to try and make it easier. But you've got to know that you've done it, because obviously eventually environments will swap and change and become something else. So you're going to see a change in what's coming in the format of the current DLP policy. There's going to be the ability to add groups. It's in private preview at the moment, and there's some bits I can't show you yet, but those of you who come to EPPC, it'll definitely be in public by then. But that's the point of the groups. Now, there's one more thing that we see in groups, which is where Microsoft are talking, is environment routing. Some of you may have heard us talking about this last year. I want to make my makers, whether they're pros or they're citizen devs, I want them to be sent to a personal developer environment. It has some good ideas and some bad ideas. It's great for getting the rubbish out of default. It's bad in the fact that they'll try and build everything in there and not think about your beautiful environment strategy. So what's worse, a dev environment, a default environment full of junk, or having to manage people with multiple personal environments? It's up to you and the way you want to do this strategy. This is a lead into more of this routing point of view, where you'll be able to route for different things. This is phase one of routing, so it's worth having a look. The first thing it asks me is, do I want to enable personal developer environments for makers? Now, at the moment, it's listed as one. If you need more than one per person, you can do that in the Azure landing zone for Power Platform. But I've seen clients that have turned it on and added 3 per person and ended up with something like 48,000 environments. You don't want those overnight. You need to think about this. So even if I say I want people to have one, do I want all makers to get one today? Now it's going to go off and make loads of nice new shiny environments? Or do I want it when I only add new makers? Purely up to you. I've got clients that have done it both ways. It's what do you want to do? I cannot yet pick a group of people, and this is for everything. This isn't letting me choose at the moment a specific environment. We're going to get to environment groups. So now I could pick a group that's in here that I want to do it to. So I've got clients that have done all makers, and they've made an environment group with managed environments in it that they want to do it to. Possibly the pro devs. Maybe there's that super enthusiastic group of makers, probably in finance, that like to do their own weird thing. You can put them in an environment group and let it auto create environments for them, where you have them under a very strict DLP, and you can only let that group have these new environments. One thing we're going to talk about in a minute is about security groups, but it does let me put a security group against this environment grouping, so I can limit the humans this is affecting. So I can use an Entra ID security group and go, all the pro dev team and nobody else. But you need to have an environment group, and these are all premium. A few of the things that people haven't necessarily seen that have been added from a security point of view in tenant settings, we've got anything that's got this funny little green icon that some people say looks more like headphones than anything else. That means it's only for managed environments. So you can look down through some of these that have come in. So developer environment assignments, this is whether you want people to have them again, but this is more who can create and manage them. Do you want everyone to allow them or only some? A few other things that we've seen before, AI builder credits. It's a fun little box. Do we want them to consume them or not? And unassigned ones. But these were in other places. Some of these have recently appeared in this list. And again, that's part of what we're trying to do with the security, is help everybody know where to turn things on. Microsoft have made a big thing in recent weeks of the desktop flow actions being able to have a DLP only for managed environments. Now, that is one of the things I'm most unhappy about, that I can only do DLP for desktop flow actions in a managed environment. There are so many other places they exist. But this one, again, it's worth looking at and exploring through all of these. You may have some extra ones in your world. This is where a lot of the new Copilot settings and things are going to come. Some of you may have seen my post recently, is when we had this button that said you can have Copilot or not in Power Platform, that's changed. You're getting Copilot whether you like it or not. That button now only really stops the new features, the preview features, which isn't really a help to us in security. A few other things that people may or may not know exist. This has been here a long time, to see which dynamics and apps are enabled. This is across the tenant. This isn't for any particular environment. So if you didn't know that existed and you go, I don't use dynamics, I don't care, go and see what's enabled. I guarantee something's been turned on, because people create environments sometimes with them turned on. The Power Apps assets, that's something that is allowing us to put documentation out. It's part of the COE kit and some of the work going on there. However, are you happy with these URLs? It says internal resource links, but if your apps have these links and you have external people you've given guest licenses to, are you happy that all apps can read these? Is it something you're comfortable with? So again, just be aware where your documentation links can appear. And you can have Power Apps advisors. These are kind of like you're going to be your champions in different areas. I haven't set any up. This has had a few issues in here, but go explore it. But the thing to be aware of here from a security point of view is we've seen a few clients create these URLs that appear in the COE kit for admins, fine. But as they can be automatically now added to some apps, is it okay those links are there in apps with external resources and contractors and maybe even pages? So think about what you're doing. Now, Power Pages sites, this page has been here some time. I haven't got one active at the moment, but something, if you do have Power Pages sites, is go and explore the security preview and the analytics. One of the things we found where we're doing security audits is it's good to know who's using it, how much it's used, and go and have a look at what's in the security features. I haven't got one set up yet, but just so you can go and explore that, this is going to give you a better insight to any attacks and also be able to show you whether something dumb's been done, where they're allowing anonymous access to Dataverse tables they shouldn't have. It's not perfect by a long way, but it's something to know that's coming. and those of you who do a lot with pages, is keep an eye on this. This security preview is going to get a few more pieces in here, and then we're going to get a compliance tab appear as well. Now, we've all seen DLP over some time. These are nothing new. Recently, we got the ability to make data flows have DLP, as in we can put, say, you can't use SQL, and data flows actually follow them in data flow Gen 2. Fantastic. If we've got managed environments and we've got the desktop flows, I can also limit some of the actions within DLP policies. It's still not perfect, but it's definitely a long way, because I will have said you can't touch SQL, and they can go into a desktop flow and do what they want in SQL. We're getting there. It's still a long road, but just to know that that's only for managed environments. Tenant isolation, this has been around again more than a year. This is getting used more and more. Some of you have asked me in the past, but I've set this up in M365 and Azure. Why do I need to do it here? This is about the Power Platform URLs. This is about what I'm allowing other things to read in and out of here. If you as a business have a subtenant and you need your Power Platform to read and write, fantastic. If you don't, block it. If you've got third-party software that is, say, ServiceNow, and there's no reason for this to touch ServiceNow, you can block ServiceNow being able to API in. It's about what's useful for you. It originally came out to stop the home use office. How many of you still have Excel as a connector rather than Excel online? It's that kind of thing where your data could go to a home user. Customer lockbox, again, been out a long time. This is the ability for you to choose to stop Microsoft having access to your data. It lets them access the tenant, lets them fix things, but they cannot see your data. The enterprise policies, came out last year. This is really about the compliance with trying to sit alongside what's happening with Azure. It's pushing you towards having things like Key Vault. Now, some of you I know are not the biggest fans of Key Vault because you can see other ways to break it. This is what Microsoft are trying to do here. It's about managing the keys and the security keys. There's a few things happening in Azure which may make this less important. There's some security keys and the ability to have a better, more secure vault coming. But this is something we can do. Now, why is this important? I haven't got a policy created at the moment. If I've got a key vault here, I, as the admin, know there's a key vault, and more importantly, I know which environments are using it. Because devs are quite often the ones managing them, and often the fact that the security team don't know who's using them, where and when, I've let you use it in these two environments, but you've also got an environment over there. There's nothing that stops me at the moment letting you use that Key Vault security reference in this other environment. So this is a way to be able to see where your little darlings are using your Key Vaults and other such things. You might not stop it all, but at least you know. There's a few other things that we as Power Platform admins can also see now, depending on your role. You can now get the M365 Admin Center appear here at the bottom, and Enter ID. It will depend on what you've been allowed within your tenancy. Now, why are we being able to see these? There is a move towards us being able to create security groups. Now, that will be something the Azure teams or Entra teams will be able to stop us doing in the future, but there's also the move for us to be able to add licenses. It's still a bit of a fight with what was the Azure part of Microsoft, but just so if you suddenly look and these appear and you go, how have I got those? There are things we are being allowed to do. Okay, let's jump back to the slides. Let's see if I can get those to come back. And we'll move on, otherwise I'll run out of time, as always. And let's jump to there. And for those of you who haven't had the joy of digging into what managed environments do, I'm gonna give you the deck afterwards so you can click the links and follow them. But managed environments over a standard environment, we get the ability to do those environment groups. We can limit sharing. Now, sometimes we don't care, sometimes we do care. If you're all the way into production environment, it's quite important sometimes to limit that it's not just being shared randomly. However, if you've shared your apps via AED groups or Enter ID security groups, it matters not. Limiting sharing is not something that will stop it, because that AD group or that Enter ID group have already been allowed. The weekly usage insights are quite cute, but if you are an admin of 50 plus environments, you will learn to hate those emails. Hopefully, very soon, we will start to get those as a page we can view instead of your box being filled up with weekly with hundreds of emails going, this environment's analytics. Now, the data policies, there are a few extra things happening in DLP. As I said, the ability to do the desktop flows. There are a few extra things that are going to come in as data loss prevention policy actions that we'll be only able to do with managed environments. Some of you have already seen the pipelines. Some of you love them, some of you hate them. I'm not getting into that from a security perspective, but they only exist in managed environments. The solution check has been there since the start of managed environments. It is good if you want to make new things really good. Be careful turning it on anything that already exists, because what Microsoft say is a good solution today is probably not what it was 6 months ago. The IP firewalls, we talked about being able to make your environment nice and safe. Cookie bindings, being able to manage customer keys. That's in addition to the key vault, but fits with it. You'll see some better descriptions of those coming out with Microsoft very soon. The lockbox, the extended backup. Some of you have seen blogs and things I did about 9 months ago about exporting data to App Insights. One of my biggest gripes in Microsoft at the moment is they are stopping the export to Azure App Insights if it's not a managed environment, which I think is a mistake. But those of you rely on that data for security, as well as managing your platform, as well as being able to feed Azure Monitor and Sentinel, I think that's a shame. And there is a bit of complaint happening with that at the moment. There's a new tool called Catalog, which you may or may not have seen. It's designed to catalog everything as it's being built and create a list. Now, some of you will have seen some of that in the old COE kit. They've taken that concept and put it into managed environments so you can see a list. Mainly apps at the moment, the rest will come. It's quite cute, but it takes a little bit to set up. Does it help security? Not really, because I can see it in the COE kit. Is this the death of the COE kit? Not yet. So if you want to be able to share the list just for these environments with a sysadmin, with a business group, it's one way to look at it. Do I need it? Not yet. The default environment routing we looked at briefly, and creating app descriptions with Copilot. Yay! That's what managed environments get you. Now, I know some of you that talk to me regularly are chuckling in the background. Do I want to pay the extra premium for this? There are some nice things from a pure security point of view. If you do have premium licenses, things, the ability to do the environmental groups, as well as the backup, as well as the firewall, are probably worth the money if you've got secure data. Do I need it on every environment? Not yet, but Microsoft will continue to push us this way. So if you are doing Dataverse, you're going to have to start to think about premium licenses, probably where we're going to go. So let's move us on. How are we doing time-wise? So I'm going to do a very quick whiz through Purview because there's some changes coming out. Some have just happened. There's some more coming out. I'm going to show you a few screens. And again, I'm going to do some more blogs on this. So I know we'll run out of time to go through lots of this, but those of you who want to see more, my recordings from EPPC and Collab Summit will be online soon anyway, and I'll blog. So we've talked about Purview a lot in the past. Those of you who've heard me talk, we used to have the M365 side, which was named Purview, and the Azure side named Purview. Now, they both technically still exist. The Compliance Center, as it was in M365, is where going to be our gateway into Microsoft Purview as a project. There are lots of things coming together. Some of them are coming in from Sentinel. Some of them are coming in from other security tools. So it will become our security home. Is it joined up yet? Nearly, ever so close. We used to say if you want to monitor people actions, you use the Compliance Center, the M365. If you wanted to monitor data, you use the Azure side. Now they're coming together, and this is what the new portal looks like. And I'm going to jump out. I'll put the links in at the bottom. Both of these go to the same place. You just get this little button at the top. So let me jump out briefly, and I will take you, hopefully, my mouse will get there, into what this looks like. So this is, let me just take you from the portal point of view, just so you've seen it, because we're supposed to show off the nice new portal. Everything security is coming together. So those of your teams that were doing the Azure security anyway, all the way up into Sentinel, they will start to come down into here too. We've got the familiar things we saw in M365, like audit. Now, there are new things that have been added. For those of you who've never used the audit tool to follow Power Platform or Power BI, we pick an activity. And if I just typing something like Power Platform, you'll see I can track anybody who's made, updated or deleted DLP, lockbox. There's a whole bunch of Copilot actions. You have to be aware what you're typing in here, though. Because if I just type power, you've got all the fabric stuff, which goes on and on. You want to monitor anybody doing fabric, you've got a billion things you can play with. And eventually, when we get past all of those, you'll start to find the apps. So Power Apps is listed as Power Apps, one word. And it's about knowing the words in here to find it. But we can see which humans create, edit, delete, launch, publish apps. Ask COE Kit just tells me who's launched it. So this is useful. And in a lot of businesses, the Power Platform admins are finally getting access to this. We've got the ability to look at lots of other admin pieces in here. We've got APIs. This is Power Platform as one word instead of two, just to confuse you. APIs created, edited, connections edited, and all the other bits we looked at before. So we've got Power Pages sites. Now, what's the interesting point behind all of these is I can then list those activities, or I can pick the operational parts of them. I can then choose what I want to record, if any, and then I can let it search everything. And it will pick the retention period of your M365, which may be 90 days, could be a year, could be 30 days. You'll have to talk to your M365 team. And it will give you a huge list of everybody who's done everything in those things you've ticked. Now, this was built originally for us trying to look at bad behavior of humans or accounts. So you can actually do it by a human. If you're worried about the behavior of a maker or a pro dev or a contractor, you can put a user's name in here and get everything that weird human did. This can also be pushed out into a regular synchronized report. So it's quite useful to see. It takes a little bit of fiddling, more time than we've got today, but this is something, again, I'll put in the blog giving you some good examples. But this is where my humans are. Now, I wanted to show you, if I can get onto a different screen. This is the Azure Purview side as it was. It's sitting under the same thing. And I know mine's going to probably break, so I won't waste too much time on it. But if you go under the data sources, we can now add in Dataverse. And if I view the details in here, this is going to let me scan my Dataverse per environment. And if I make up a very quick new one, let me register a new one. And at the moment, this tends to be done more by the security team than us as Power Platform. You can give it a name, you give it an environment URL, and you'll have to have a collection created in Purview for you. I come back just so you've seen that part. You get to create different levels, and it will scan initially to find all the basic metadata. The next step on is you can actually start to tag the data. And in a very simple way of explaining it, just like your emails, it says it's public, do what you like with it. It's internal only, you can't share it anywhere, or you can share, but be aware that this is sensitive. We can start to tag our Dataverse data, whether it's a little bit basic at the moment, but it's definitely coming along. And it will scan through and it will look for types of data that's there. It will look, you can see there's some basic scan levels here. Extract the basic information, takes the schema, and then you can then start to tag the schema that's alongside it. So there are some really interesting things we can start to do to be able to look at what's in there. It can look for patterns like credit card security numbers, that kind of thing as well, to go, hang on a minute, you've got PII data in here. What the hell are you doing in default? There's a lot of stuff coming in here. It's still relatively new for Power Platform. Purview's been around long enough to do most of the other data sources. But if you've got your own environment and you want to play, or you talk to your security team, pick a good messy environment and get them to add it as a data source so you can see the kinds of reports you're going to get out of it. Again, I'm going to do some blogs to give you some ideas. Cancel this. We can then start to look at asset types. I obviously got just some basic ones set up in here. What kind of databases, processes, products. And you can build these out depending on what you want. And it may be different for different parts of your business. So I want to monitor this bit. I want to limit this bit. And if your solution has SAP, SQL, SharePoint, Dataverse, and something else, we can start to look at the whole family together. How many times have you been asked where the data comes from in your Dataverse? We can now start to track that data lineage we've never been able to do before. So there's some lovely stuff coming. It's not perfect yet, but it's definitely worth knowing this exists. And one final bit I was going to jump to, and then I promise I'll shut up and Sarah can throw me off, is good old Fabric. A lot of you heard me talking about Fabric and the fact that we can integrate this with Dataverse. It's totally connected now. We can't get away from it. So a security head-on. You've enabled your data from Dataverse to be copied or linked into Fabric. Who's owning it in Fabric? You're at the beck and call of that workspace owner. There is not a proper single sign-on part yet that's fully working. It's almost there to allow me to set single sign-on on that workspace. If I own it, if you've put data in somebody else's workspace that has lots of other data, Can I secure it properly yet? Not quite. It's very close now. We've got a lot more from last time I spoke. But be aware, if you're going to share your data into Fabric, you don't yet have fully compliant security on it. So just be careful. I'm reading back in through virtual tables. Obviously, that's at the owner of that data's choice. Power BI people can still get to Dataverse in the same way using the links for Fabric. The new Fabric connector you may or may not have seen yet. Move on one slide, and then I promise to shut up. The Fabric connector at the moment exists only in virtual tables. It's released, I think it's the end of this month for everything else. And the Power BI people can reach us and pull data out. So again, who's got access to your environment? Where's your data going? This is where the Purview is going to start to be able to see, where has your data gone? Do I want it shared with Fabric? Do I want Fred's team to get access to my data? Lots of cool stuff coming up, and I hope that gave everybody a bit of insight, and hopefully you learned a few new things, or at least to know where to look. And I'll hand it back to the beautiful Sarah.
Thanks, Claire. That was great. Bless you. We can run over, I don't mind. Well, that was great. It was so clear. I mean, I followed, which is shows that it was clear for everyone to understand. We have recorded it, so that'll be available tomorrow. But is there any questions for now before we finish up, or any comments from anybody?
Well, they're still vaguely awake, so I haven't sent them to sleep.
They're definitely awake, really interested, and your knowledge comes across very well. You clearly know stuff, and it's impressive, and yes, there's so much to
it. It brings out the governance story a lot further, but some of this is beyond your ordinary Power Platform admin. Certainly when we start playing with Purview, it's got to fit together. And my biggest concern when I go to clients is the poor old Power Platform admin is being asked to start doing Purview data analysis. They're not my tool, I don't know what to do. So that has to be a joined up conversation with security. Charles, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I didn't want to take the time away from anyone else, but I just wanted to say thank you. It was really good. Really appreciate it.
Cool. And Sunil, I think you've got yours up as well.
Yeah. Hi, Claire. Thank you so much for this session, first of all. One quick question. You that we do not need to have, if we are the Power Platform admin, we do not need to have a whole lot of other accesses also, other roles as well. But as you also mentioned that some of the roles from the higher hierarchy does not cover the things from the lower hierarchy as well.
Yeah, so it's as a Power Platform admin, you, from a Power Platform point of view, you are the ruler of Power Platform. But there, as we know, there are so many other tools that we have, like the Purview side. I would say a lot of people expect our Power Platform admins to be the keepers of the gateways and the VNet gateways. Stay away from gateways. They are not your responsibility. Gateways get very messy very quickly. Mm-hmm. You can see where they are, but I always tell the Power Platform admins, gateways are a whole world of pain. Do not go near them. They are not for you to create and maintain. But from the Purview side, it's definitely worth you starting to have those conversations. Can I get access at least to the audit side of Purview? There may be some restrictions on what you can and can't do, because obviously you can't go searching for your buddy to see what naughty things they've been opening, but they can limit it to Power Platform or Power BI only, so you can search for the things you need. But it's getting very clever very quickly.
I do understand that, but at the same time, not many of the organizations have liberty to have separate admins for individual tasks, I would say, or individual areas, right? So at the end of the day, being a Power Platform admin, I'm the gateways admin as well. So
that's okay. But if you can find, you will find that there are certain responsibilities on the servers that you're connecting to. You could be the admin as long as you make sure you get sign off from that data owner. Because if there's an audit, if there's a data leak and it goes wrong, they're looking at you. So you need to have clear confirmation from the owner of that server, the owner of that database, that Fred, Jim, and Barney can read and write to it happily. You wouldn't know; it's not your server. So in any other system, even when we were all on-prem, we were one admin on their own. We would not have suddenly randomly let Power BI people connect all over the place. So why would we now? So it's easy to get bullied into it. It's more about making sure that you are not responsible for who gets what. You're there just to get a sign off. Yes, somebody's emailed me to say Fred can connect.
I understand.
If you're an M365 admin and a Power Platform admin, you're going to love what's coming with the licensing and everything else. It's going to get a lot smoother.
I understand. Thank you, Simon. Thank you so much.
No problem. Damola, I think you had your hand up as well.
Yeah, hi Claire. Thanks for your time today and congratulations on your new role. Okay, so my question is more of outside of what we've done today, but is around DLP policies as well. So we have this group of connectors, Office 365 Outlook, and one of the actions is get emails, which you can use to get your own personal email when you use, because that's the connection you use in apps and Flow. And we were kind of doing some kind of pen test, and something just came up like, if you have someone that is not so happy, like an insider attacker, and I write, I create an app, and the app, on the onstart of the app, I write get emails with a search query, and I write another patch in there to just send the content of my collection to me or anyone. In one way or the other, that's the data breach. Now, in trying to fix it, we know Power Platform came up with this action review when you can stop some actions in your DLP part where you can stop some actions. But for Office 365 Outlook, you cannot do that because it's not blockable. Now, in a way to resolve it, I go to the Microsoft Graph area to turn off some of the consent. But I'm kind of like worried if I turn off all the consent for these API calls, will that not affect anything in Office 365 broad view?
You'll break a few things. So the simplest way to stop it going out of your tenant is to turn tenant isolation on in the admin center, because you cannot, if I go back on there, I go back on the admin center, if you come back down here to the tenant isolation and you have it set that nothing other than your own tenant can read and write, it doesn't matter how you try to poke your own personal one, that it cannot reach it. It cannot reach a URL, an email account, a SharePoint list that is not in your tenant.
Oh.
So that's the way. There are, as a security ethical hacker, there are still a few ways I can cause you trouble, but that's a much faster way to stop majority of people creating things where they can just send it or call their own SharePoint, or call their own emails. Go and have a read up on tenant isolation in Power Platform, because that will stop them talking to Claire at claire.com. You can limit it to just your URLs.
Oh.
Much easier, because you're going to face that in SharePoint, in Exchange, and still there are other connectors out there and APIs which you can't block. This will help you a lot. It's not perfect, but it will they have to be very good to get around it, rather than just explore and be stupid.
Cool. Thanks so much for this. I'll just read up on this and get this over. Thank you very much.
No problem. Clayton, you did have your hand up, but I'm conscious of time. Did you still want to ask?
Oh, no, that's fine. I was conscious about the time as well. So
You
appreciate
can
it.
always,
Thank you.
You can all reach out to me on LinkedIn if you need me at any point. And
Will
I
do.
know that Lee and some of the others, they ask me anyway. So I will do my best to answer when I can. Back to you, Sarah.
Thank you very much. And yeah, again, congratulations on the new role. It sounds like we got you at the right time with a few conferences coming up in the summer as well. So yeah, no, great. Thank you so much. I know first week of your new job, and we've managed to get an hour of your time. So, and thanks again to everybody.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.